Everyone in Riverton knew Serena Prescott. The Prescott heiress changed boyfriends the way other people change clothes. In 5 years of marriage, she had gone through 99 lovers. People in our circle used to praise my patience, say I was the perfect husband, that I could endure anything. Then Mason Clark appeared. He was just a swimming coach from an ordinary family. Serena broke her own rule for him. For the first time, she brought one of her men home. Then she gave me 2 choices: accept Mason moving in or take the money and leave. Everyone waited for me to swallow my pride again, just like I always had. This time I chose divorce because in my last life, I had chosen to stay, and I paid for it with everything. Mason kept pushing, step by step, until Serena only allowed herself to see me once a month. In the end, I had a son and a daughter and lived like a perfect family. I spent my life guarding a marriage in name only, then died sick and alone in a nursing home. Now that I've been given another chance, I wanted only one thing from Serena Prescott: half the fortune and all my freedom. The private room went dead silent. For the first time, a crack appeared in Serena Prescott's calm expression. She stared at me and asked, "Caleb Warren, are you sure?" I didn't bother repeating myself. I signed the last page of the divorce agreement and pushed it across the table. "Yes," I said, "I'm sure. When will the money be transferred? I need to go home and pack." How could I not be sure? In my last life, I've been stupid enough to believe that. As long as I was still her husband, no one could truly take my place. I thought we had history. I thought if the misunderstanding from years ago was cleared up, maybe we could go back to what we had been. Instead, I got to watch Serena and Mason grow old together, surrounded by children and grandchildren. I became an invisible servant in the Prescott household. Everyone mocked me, a man who couldn't even control his own wife. Near the end of my last life, I went to the hospital to bring Serena food when she was sick. Outside her room, I heard her laughing with Mason. She told him that scandal from back then, the one where I was accused of spending the night with 5 women, had been arranged by her. Honestly, he didn't do anything wrong, Serena had said lightly. He was just too boring. Could spend a lifetime with a block of wood like that. Mason laughed. "You're ruthless." "If I wasn't," she said, "how would he have obediently accepted me cheating?" That one sentence shattered the last illusion I had carried for decades. No wonder she had never let me explain. Just like always, she let them humiliate me. I stood up. For years, I had handled Serena's investment company, cleaned up her messes, managed her social circle, and sat through endless dinners with these parasites. Now we were divorced. I had no reason to entertain any of them. In the hallway mirror, I caught sight of my reflection, sunken eyes, yellowed skin, a body worn down by stress and sleepless nights. I was only 30. I looked 50. I smiled faintly at the man in the mirror. Yes, I looked terrible, but not for much longer. I had barely taken a step when Serena followed me out. That surprised me. "I know you're angry," she said, crossing her arms. "If you want, move into the villa in Northridge first. I'll visit when I have time. Even if the title is gone, all these years still mean something." Her tone carried the same impatient charity she'd always used with me. I said coldly, "No, thank you. I want the divorce. If you still have even a shred of decency left, transfer my share of the assets as soon as possible." Her face darkened instantly. I turned and walked away. Outside, the winter wind hit me full in the face. For the first time in years, I felt light. When I got home, my belongings had already been tossed into a pile by the door. Movers went in and out of the villa like ants. Inside, Richard and Margaret Prescott were laughing so hard. Their voices carried through the open doorway. "Mason really is better. It's only been 3 months, and Serena is already pregnant. Unlike that useless man who occupied the position for years and couldn't give us a child." I lowered my eyes, hiding the coldness in them. Serena and I had once had a child. I only found out after she had already gotten rid of it. He said she was too young and didn't want a child, tying her down. Later, when her parents blamed me for being useless, I took the blame without protest. Serena stood there and said nothing for me. Back then, I made excuses for her. Now I understood. Love and indifference had always been obvious. Less than 3 hours later, my phone was blowing up with news alerts. Prescott family publicly welcomes new son-in-law. Former husband cast out. Serena Prescott to hold grand wedding with Mason Clark. Serena, who had always been cold and reserved with the media, even gave an interview. "Please don't spread baseless rumors that could hurt Mason," she said. "I will pursue any false statements to the fullest extent." The public protection I had wanted for years, She gave it so easily, just not to me. I swiped away the interview and looked at the text from the bank. $500 million had arrived. I smiled. Then I booked the most luxurious private club in Riverton. My best friend, Miles Dawson, called almost immediately. "Caleb, are you okay?" His voice was cautious, like he thought I might break at any second. I laughed. "I'm great. Free tonight. Come to the spa and massage with me, my treat." There was a stunned pause. "Have you lost your mind?" I leaned back under the hands of two masseurs and said lightly, "No, I just got divorced." Silence. Miles had seen what I'd become for Serena over the years. He knew better than anyone how low I had bent myself for her. "Come over," I said. "I need to talk to you anyway. I want to start a company this time." His shout nearly blew out my eardrum. "Holy hell. You finally woke up. Do you know how many times I told you that you were wasting your life? You were the top finance genius at Franklin University, and you went to the Prescotts and worked like a slave. The media called you a kept man. I wanted to strangle you just watching. It wasn't wrong. In my last life, I had dragged the nearly bankrupt Prescott Group back from the edge. With my own hands, I turned it into an industry giant and helped to make the Prescott family the richest in the nation. As vice president, I made less than $1,000 a month. The empire I built with my life ended up belonging to Mason Clark and his children. Before I died, I couldn't even afford a $2 hot dog. In this life, I wanted to see whether the Prescott family could still stand without me. After a haircut, styling, and a full spa treatment, I finally looked human again. The hollow-eyed ghost was gone. In his place stood a young man with clean black hair and a right back. Miles circled me and clicked his tongue. "That's more like it. Back in college, you were one of the better-looking guys. The way you looked before, I could hardly stand to see it. In the past, I barely spent money on myself. Whatever I had went to the Prescott household. Even then, they still treated me like a greedy parasite. Now I didn't care. I snapped my fingers, ordered the most expensive liquor in the club, and grinned at Miles. Tonight we drink." Word spread fast that I was starting my own company. The market was full of gossip. Some predicted I'd fail spectacularly. A few people who actually understood my ability quietly reached out and asked to invest. Then Serena called me herself. "Caleb Warren, you really think having some money means you can start a company? If you want to work, come back to Prescott Group. Don't go out there and embarrass the Prescott family." Same tone, same contempt. I said calmly, "Miss Prescott, we're divorced. What I do has nothing to do with the Prescott family." Her breathing sharpened. "Enough with this tantrum. Come back. That Bennett project from before, not my problem." I cut in. "You got the wrong person." So that was why she called. Several profitable international deals at Prescott Group had all been secured and managed by me. Without me, no one there could handle the follow-up. "Caleb Warren," she snapped. "When you lose everything, don't come begging me." I hung up. Who would end up begging whom was still an open question. On Serena's end, the call disconnected, and she threw her phone aside in rage. She was used to controlling me. She had never seen me slip this far out of her hands. The marketing director beside her asked carefully, "Miss Prescott, is Mr. Warren willing to come back?" "Get out." The director fled. Mason stepped forward at once and wrapped his arms around Serena from behind. "Don't be angry. You're pregnant." He helped her steady her breathing, but there was calculation hidden in his eyes. "It hurts me seeing you work this hard," he said softly. "Why don't I help you with the company?" Serena frowned. "You don't have experience. Start by rotating through a few departments." Mason's face fell instantly. Then why did Caleb become vice president the moment he joined? Am I worse than him? Serena almost said yes. I was a top finance graduate from a prestigious university. Mason was a swim coach. But when she saw his wounded expression, her heart softened again. Besides, she still believed she could keep everything under control. "Fine," she said tiredly. Mason immediately smiled through his tears. "Don't worry, Serena, I'll definitely do better than Caleb." Then he started making changes at Prescott Group. He also kept trying to cause trouble for me. Unfortunately for him, I had spent too many years in business. His cheap tricks were easy to see through and easier to crush. While he fumbled around at Prescott, I snatched several small but profitable projects they had been negotiating. Then former Prescott employees began reaching out to me. They had once worked under me. And ever since Mason learned they were my people, he had targeted them openly and in secret. Their lives at Prescott had become unbearable. I took them all. In one blow, Prescott Group lost more than a dozen core staff members and a huge chunk of client resources. Mason didn't care. He filled the gaps with his relatives and friends. Prescott Group was too big to be hurt by losing a few employees. 3 months later, the cracks began to explode. All at once, several major projects were stolen by competitors. Internal chaos spread. Rumors flew through the company. On my side, I led my new team through multiple deals worth tens of millions. Our company's name finally started to ring through the industry. I announced 3 paid days off and doubled the project bonuses. The office erupted in cheers. Smiling, I went downstairs myself to buy coffee for the team. The moment I stepped into the lobby, I saw Serena. I acted like she didn't exist and walked straight past her. She grabbed my wrist. "Caleb Warren," she said through clenched teeth. "What exactly do you want?" She looked awful. Even flawless makeup couldn't hide the fatigue in her face. I pulled my hand away. "Miss Prescott, I don't understand the question." Her expression darkened. "Stop making trouble. Shut down your little company and come back with me." I almost laughed. "Do you have memory loss? We're divorced. You have no right to tell me what to do." My indifference seemed to make her angrier than any argument ever had. "Don't push me too far, Caleb. There won't be another chance." She lifted her chin like she was offering me a reward. "If you come back, I'll make you CEO this time." I looked at her as if she were insane. "Oh, thanks. Save the CEO seat for your wonderful husband, Mason Clark." She paused, then suddenly smiled as if she had figured me out. "So that's it. You're jealous over a title?" Her voice softened with false understanding. "You've always been too possessive." "Fine, this one was my fault. In 2 years, I'll remarry you. Happy, but there won't be another wedding. And don't make trouble in front of Mason. I don't want him getting hurt." For a second, I was too stunned to speak. How had I ever fallen in love with a woman this arrogant and absurd? "I don't want to remarry you," I said. "I want you to get out of my sight. One more second of looking at you makes me sick." That finally detonated her temper. "Caleb Warren, do you really think you're untouchable now in Riverton? Crushing you is easier than crushing an ant. I can make you lose everything." The second she finished, a crisp, elegant voice spoke from behind her. "I'd love to see how Miss Prescott plans to make him lose everything." Serena turned. The moment she saw who it was, her face went rigid as if she'd just seen a ghost. The woman standing in the lobby looked to be in her early 30s. She wore a charcoal gray suit with a long camel coat draped over her shoulders. Every movement carried effortless confidence. The entire lobby fell silent. Even the receptionist straightened instinctively. Serena's pupils contracted. Vivian Sterling? The name alone was enough to make everyone nearby inhale sharply. Vivian Sterling, chairwoman of Sterling Capital. The woman who had turned a family investment firm into one of the largest financial empires in the country. More importantly, she had been my professor's favorite student years before, and my mentor. She smiled faintly. I asked a question, "Miss Prescott, how exactly are you planning to destroy my business partner?" "Business partner?" Serena whipped around to stare at me. "You joined Sterling Capital?" I shook my head. "No." Vivian answered instead. "He refused." The entire lobby became even quieter. Everyone in finance knew people would kill for a chance to work under Vivian Sterling. She continued calmly. "So I invested in him instead." She handed me a folder. "The funds cleared this morning. $5 billion. Serena's expression froze. $5 billion? Vivian nodded casually. "For 20%. People around us nearly dropped their coffee. A company only 3 months old, valued at $25 billion. It sounded insane. Unless the investor was Vivian Sterling. She never lost money. Not once. Serena stared at me as if seeing a stranger. "When did this happen?" "After the divorce." Vivian smiled. "I've been looking for Caleb for years." She looked at me with unmistakable appreciation. The Prescott family had a dragon and convinced themselves he was a house cat. A few employees nearby couldn't help laughing. Serena's face turned green. Vivian wasn't finished. I reviewed Prescott Group's financial reports. The timing was interesting. She looked straight at Serena. Every year, Caleb's department produced extraordinary profits. The departments under everyone else barely broke even. I wondered whether you had ever asked yourself why. Serena opened her mouth. Nothing came out, because she never had. She had simply assumed everything Caleb accomplished was ordinary. Vivian looked at me again. "I've also signed every executive who followed you. They're excellent. They all say the same thing. Mr. Warren did the work. Other people took the credit." Serena's breathing became uneven. For the first time, she remembered. Every successful acquisition. Every crisis solved overnight. Every impossible negotiation. Whenever she asked how difficult something had been, I always answered with the same words. It's already handled. She had never once asked, how? At that moment, her secretary came running into the lobby, completely out of breath. Miss Prescott. She stopped after seeing Vivian, then continued nervously. The board is demanding an emergency meeting. Our stock has fallen another 11%. 3 more institutional investors have withdrawn. And she swallowed. Sterling Capital just announced a strategic partnership with Warren Capital. Every pair of eyes landed on me. Warren Capital, my company. The name hadn't meant much yesterday. Today, it shook the entire financial market. Serena felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at me, then at Vivian, then back at me again. Finally, she understood. She hadn't divorced a dependent husband. She had thrown away the greatest asset the Prescott family had ever possessed. Vivian smiled politely. Miss Prescott, I believe your company is on fire. You should probably go. Serena stood there motionless. For the first time in her life, she looked defeated. Without another word, I took my coffee, turned around, and walked back upstairs. This time, she didn't dare stop me. The moment I stepped into the elevator, the lobby behind me felt like it had been cut off from reality. Steel doors slid shut. Silence returned. For the first time, Serena Prescott was on the outside of something she thought she controlled. And I didn't look back. Upstairs, the top floor of the building was already prepared for me. Not the old Prescott office I used to work in. A new space. Clean glass walls. Minimalist design. City skyline stretching in every direction like it belonged to me now. Miles was already there, pacing. You didn't tell me Vivian Sterling was backing you. I loosened my tie slightly. I didn't know she would show up in person. Miles stopped. She came herself? I nodded once. That alone was enough answer. Miles exhaled slowly, then laughed in disbelief. Yeah, okay. The world officially shifted. A notification pinged across my tablet. Warren Capital, plus 3 institutional funds secured. Another. Sterling Capital strategic press release, trending nationwide. Another. Prescott Group stock falling. Still falling. I watched it without expression. This was the natural result of imbalance correcting itself. Miles leaned over my shoulder. Serena's company is panicking. Mason's been moved into operations, and he's already. I cut in. Making mistakes. Miles nodded. Big ones. I set the tablet down. That's faster than expected. It's also worse, Miles said carefully. He's dragging her family into decision-making now. Her father is interfering directly. I finally looked up. That was the real problem. Prescott Group didn't collapse from external pressure. It collapsed from internal rot when the wrong people started fixing things. Downstairs, Serena stood frozen in the lobby long after I left. Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Her secretary, the board, her father, investors. Every name she had once controlled now sounded panicked. Mason finally appeared beside her, breath slightly uneven like he had rushed. What happened? He asked quickly. Serena didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were still fixed on the elevator doors, as if I might walk back out of them. Finally, she said flatly, he's not coming back. Mason blinked, then forced a small laugh. So what? He's just bluffing with some investor. Sterling Capital invested $5 billion, she interrupted. That stopped him. Completely. Even Mason knew what that meant. Not just money. Validation. Power. Protection. Mason's expression shifted quickly. That doesn't mean anything, he said slower now. We still have the Prescott name. Serena's voice turned colder. We're losing it. Another notification popped on her phone. Breaking. Warren Capital secures international expansion deal. Mason glanced at it, then quickly softened his tone. Serena, you're pregnant. Stress is bad for her. Don't, she snapped. That was the first time she had ever cut him off like that. Mason went quiet. For a brief moment, something darker flickered in his eyes. But he hit fast. 3 days later, Prescott Group boardroom. The atmosphere had changed. Uneasy. The chairman of the board spoke carefully. Miss Prescott, we need a recovery plan. Another director added. 3 more clients have transferred contracts to Warren Capital, and Sterling is backing them publicly. Someone else muttered. This is a hostile market shift. Serena sat at the head of the table, expression controlled, but only barely. Mason stood behind her chair like a shadow that had overstayed its welcome. He finally spoke. I can fix this. All eyes turned to him. He straightened slightly. If Warren Capital is growing through acquisitions, we counter it. We target their early-stage investors. I can. A senior director cut him off. With respect, You've already cost us 2 partnerships. Silence. Mason's face tightened. Serena finally spoke. Leave us. The room hesitated, then slowly filed out. When the doors closed, Mason stepped closer. Serena, they don't trust me yet. That's normal. But if you give me time. You've had time, she said quietly. That made him pause. She finally looked at him directly. For 3 months. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. That was worse. Mason tried to recover. That's because everything was already unstable before I came in. Stop. One word. Sharp. Final. Mason froze. Serena leaned back slightly in her chair, rubbing her temple. Then she said something he didn't expect. I met him today. Mason's jaw tightened. Caleb. She nodded once. Mason forced a smile. And Serena didn't answer immediately, because she was remembering something she hadn't allowed herself to think about. The calmness. The clarity. The way everyone in that room had looked at him like he was standing on a different level entirely. Finally, she said, he was never beneath us. Mason's expression flickered. For the first time, the mask slipped completely. And you just realizing that now? He said quietly. Serena looked up. Something in his tone felt wrong. But before she could respond, her assistant burst into the room. Miss Prescott, it's urgent. The bank is reviewing all credit lines. And Warren Capital just acquired Ued-Industries. Serena stood abruptly. Mason turned sharply. That was our deal. The assistant hesitated. They outbid us in 12 minutes. Silence again. This time heavier. Final. Serena stared at the screen. My name was everywhere. Not as someone returning, but someone replacing. And for the first time, she understood what it felt like to lose control of a world she thought would always bend around her. The final blow didn't come with noise. It came with paperwork. 1 week later, Prescott Group headquarters. The board meeting lasted only 17 minutes. Declining revenue, failed acquisitions, broken credit lines, frozen investor confidence, and one final line on the projection screen. Warren Capital market dominance, confirmed in 3 sectors. The chairman cleared his throat. Miss Prescott. Serena already knew what came next. She sat perfectly still. Her hands rested on the table, steady in a way that didn't match her face anymore. We are initiating a leadership restructuring vote. Silence. Then a pen clicked. Then another. Mason stood at her side, but no one looked at him anymore. He tried anyway. This is temporary. I can. A board member cut him off without looking up. You've cost us enough. That was it. Her finale loss. One by one, votes were cast. When it ended, the chairman spoke again. Serena Prescott is relieved of CEO duties effective immediately. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. Outside the building, the city looked the same, but nothing in it belonged to her anymore. Serena stood alone on the rooftop terrace hours later. The wind moved through her perfectly styled hair, loosening it for the first time in years. Her phone lay on the table behind her, still lighting up, still ringing. Unanswered. Mason had already left. Quietly. Without drama. Without fighting. That hurt more than anything he had ever said. Down below, across the city skyline, another building had become the center of attention. Warren Capital. Bright. Expanding. Alive. Reporters gathered outside, its entrance like it was a landmark being born in real time. Inside, I stood by the glass wall. Miles beside me. You didn't destroy her, he said carefully. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. Miles studied me. People are calling it revenge. I gave a small, indifferent exhale. It isn't. A pause. It's replacement. Later that evening, a final transfer notification appeared on my screen. Prescott Group, controlling shares, acquisition completed. The last piece had moved. I closed the file. Miles leaned back. So that's it. I looked out at the city. No. He raised a brow. No. I shook my head slightly. This is just what happens when someone finally stops holding a sinking ship in place. Miles didn't respond to that, because he understood. At the Prescott estate, lights were off in rooms that used to be full of noise. Serena sat alone in the old study. No makeup, no meetings, no phone calls, just silence. On the desk in front of her lay an old folder. Caleb Warren's early performance reports. Back when she still bothered to look at them. Back when she still thought he was just efficient. Her fingers hovered over the page, then stopped. A memory surfaced without permission. My voice calm. It's already handled. Back then, she had thought it meant obedience. Now she understood. It had meant everything. The wind outside shifted. Somewhere in the distance, fireworks began to rise over the city, for a holiday celebration she hadn't even remembered was coming. Serena stood slowly, walked to the window, and watched the sky light up without her. Not because she had been defeated, but because she had finally been removed from the story she thought she was controlling. Elsewhere in the city, I turned away from the glass. Miles asked quietly, "What now?" I paused, then said, "Now we build something that doesn't need them at all." The city reflected back in the glass, wide, endless, open. And this time, it didn't belong to anyone but the future